welfare. He has 13 books and 5 chapters in reputed books and has reputed books in his credit. His 26 research papers are published in Scopus Indexed UGC Care Index journals. He has delivered more than 80 lectures as speaker, resource person in national and international seminars, conferences, workshops, and webinars, and chaired many paper reading sessions. He has actively participated and presented papers in more than 70 national and international seminars and conferences. He is chief editor and member of editorial board of many journals of international repute. He is also carrying the responsibility of national presidentship of English Language Teachers Association of India. I welcome you all. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Dishi. Thank you for your generous words. Yatra narestu pujante ramantre tatra devata. Yatre tastu na pujante sarvastrafla kriya. Where women are worshipped, there lives the gods. Wherever they are not worshipped, all actions result in failure. Good afternoon, everyone. In fact, good morning to few participants, those who are joining us from other countries. On behalf of GL Bajaj Group of Institutions, I welcome all the participants from more than 10 states and 2 or 3 countries. My very dear friend, Dr. Tarsem Singh is from Malaysia. I can see him, he's here. And also welcome all the panelists from different 5 states of our country. Let me tell you something about our journey of GL Bajaj Group of Institutions. Since its inception, GL Bajaj Group of Institutions is striving to promote excellence in field of technical education, to nurture technocrats and managers competent enough to meet the global challenges, and to develop dedicated and qualified faculty who are technology evangelists. GLBGI is a vibrant, student-centered college that thrives on leadership, collaboration, and a winning spirit. In the avenues of engineering and technology, architecture and management, GL Bajaj Group of Institutions is duly approved by AICTE, COA, and affiliated to Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Technical University. And for recognizing the efforts of Institute has been bestowed with many prestigious awards like North India Award 2018 by Satyapal Singh, ASSOCHAM Awards 2017 by Sri Prakash Javadekar ji, BBC Education Award 2017, India Excellence Award by HRD Ministry in 2017, Uttar Pradesh Award by Ram Kataria ji in 2016, and many more. And before I go ahead and I close my words, at the end, I wish to mention that Shochanti jameo yatra vinashityashu tatkulam na shochanti tu yatra te vardhate tadhi sarvada. The family in which women such as mother, wife, sister, daughter are full of sorrow, that family meet its destruction very, very soon. While the family in which they do not grieve is always prosperous. So with these approach and with these words, I welcome you all to our session. Happy International Women's Day to each one of you, and keep celebrating this International Celebration Women's Day every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Moving on, we are here to present a special presentation on eminent women amongst us. To present this, I would like to call upon Architect Tanya Bera ma'am and Dr. Snehlata ma'am with their presentations.
A very good afternoon, everyone. A very good afternoon, everyone.
You're audible, Tanya ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Very good afternoon, everyone. Myself, architect Tania Bera, on behalf of Women's Cell, GLBGI is going to present India's eminent women with us. International Women's Day on 8th March is obviously a global event. It not only reminds us about gender equality, but it also a celebration for women from all over the world. No matter what the career they opt for, the success in life is always been appreciated. With context to India, growing up as a woman is such a patriarchal society really comes with a set of challenges. And so the role models get more importance. Now we are going to deliver a brief description about the most inspiring women of India today. Their for their work, their excellence in their job, and their professional attitude has made them the most powerful women, not just in India, but all over the world. No discussion can begin without mentioning these women like Rani Lakshmibai, Sarojini Naidu, Indira Gandhi, Pratibha Patil, Kiran Bedi, Kalpana Chawla, Mary Kom, Sania Mirza, PV Sindhu, Medha Patkar, Mahashweta Devi, Nirmala Sitharaman. Now we are going to familiar with the most powerful women in our country today. Women in banking sector, from managing home expenses to leading finance revolution in the country. Mrs. Arundhati Bhattacharya, chairman of SBI. In 2016, she listed as 25th most powerful woman in the world by the Forbes magazine. Ms. Usha Thorat, Deputy Governor, RBI. Ms. Kalpana Morparia, CEO, JP Morgan India. She is also the independent director of Dr. Reddy's Lab, Burnett and Coleman, CMC Limited of Tata Consultancy. Ms. Renu Sood Karnad, Managing Director, HDFC Limited. She was awarded an Outstanding Woman Business Leader at the CNBC TV 18 Indian Business Leader Awards in 2012. Ms. Naina Lal Kidwai, Group General Manager and the Country Head HSBC India. She has received the Padma Shri Award. Ms. Chanda Kochar, CEO ICICI Bank. Women engineers and architects. Ms. Tessy Thomas, Project Director for Agni 4 Missile India DO. She is an Indian scientist and Director General of Aeronautical Systems and the former Project Director for Agni 4 Missile India DO. Thomas received the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Award. Ms. Paumita Datta, Scientist, ISRO. She is an Indian scientist working in ISRO. She is an recipient of the ISRO Team Excellence Award for the Mangalayan. Ms. Minal Rohit, Scientist, ISRO. Minal Rohit is an Indian scientist and systems engineer with the ISRO, and ISRO Team Excellence Award was given in 2013 to her. Ms. Ritu Khadial Srivastav, scientist, ISRO. She is an Indian scientist working as a physicist. She has been referred to as Rocket Woman of India. Karidhal received ISRO Young Scientist Award in 2007. Ms. Priya Balasubramaniam, Vice President, iPhone Operations, Apple. Ms. Komal Mangtani, Head of Data Intelligence, UVAR. Ms. Anjali Joshi, Vice President, Product Management, Google. Ms. Aparna Ramani, Director of Engineering, Facebook. Architect, Brinda Somaya. Architect, Anupama Kundu. Architect Somaya's building showcase India's rich architectural styles. She won UNESCO Asia Pacific Heritage World Award. Architect Kundu was awarded as Vastu Shilpa Foundation Fellowship in 1996. Phenomenal athletes who are changing the game every day they play. Ms. Mithali Raj, the captain of Indian cricket team. She is the highest scorer in women's international cricket. Ms. Shakshi Malik, a wrestler. In 2016 Summer Olympics, she became the first Indian female wrestler to win a medal at Olympics. Ms. Deepa Karmakar, gymnast. Ms. Deepika Kumari, an archer. Deepika is currently ranked 5th in the world and is a former world number 1. India's women in international position. Ms. Vanita Gupta, American civil rights attorney. Ms. Mala Adiga, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Academic Programs, Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. Ms. Sonia Agarwal, Senior Advisor for Climate Policy and Innovation in America's Power Plan. Ms. Shumana Guha was a co-chair of South Asia Foreign Policy Working Group on Biden-Harris campaign. India's women in other sectors is handed over to architect Dr. Snehalata Kashyap.
Okay, thank you, Tania ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Ms. Jaswantiben Jamanadas Popat, an Indian businesswoman who is one of the founders of Shri Mahila Grah Udyog Lijjat Papad. Ms. Swati Piramal, an Indian scientist and industrialist. She is the vice chairperson of Piramal Group. Ms. Sudha Murthy, an Indian engineering teacher, author, as well as social worker. She is also the chairperson of Infosys Foundation. Ms. Mallika Srinivasan, chairman and managing director, Tractors and Farm Equipment Limited. She is additionally on the global board of US-Indian Business Council. Ms. Binita Bali, an Indian businesswoman who was formerly the Managing Director, Britannia Industries Limited. She was awarded the Businesswoman of the Year award at 2009 Economic Times Awards. Ms. Preetha Reddy, Vice Chairperson of Apollo Hospitals. In September 2012, she was elected to the board as Independent Director of Medical Technology Company Medtronic. Ms. Indra Nui, an American business executive, former chairperson and CEO PepsiCo, she has consistently ranked among the world's 100 most powerful women. Ms. Ashwini Rajgopal, head brewer, TJ's Brew Works Pune. Ms. Barsha Bhatt worked at the Walking Deer in Mumbai. Ms. Vidya Kuber, head brewer, Big Brewski, Bengaluru. Ms. Supriya Sule, Lok Sabha MP. She is a major part of the new generation of Indian politicians. Ms. Agatha Sangma, Lok Sabha member. She became the youngest Minister of State when she took charge of the Rural Development Ministry. Ms. Kiran Mazumdar Saur, Chairperson and Managing Director, Bicon Limited. In 2014, she was awarded the Atma Gold Medal for outstanding contributions to the progress of science and chemistry. She was named by EY World Entrepreneur of the Year 2020. The purpose of showing this presentation is to showcase women empowerment and highlight their role in shaping the society. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was really informative and inspiring. Now, I would like to request Professor Harleen Kaur, Chairperson, Women's Cell, and moderator of the session, to take the session forward.
Thank you, Dishi. Thank you so much. As we all know that 8th March marks International Women's Day. Every year we celebrate this day, achievements of women, and raise awareness about gender equality. Apart from awareness and equality, we all need to understand the role of women in shaping the society. It is really significant or not? I don't know. It's a question. Let's understand the role in a better way through our distinguished panelist. Before I introduce the panelist, I take this proud privilege to share that GLBIans are honored to have a video message of the Dream Girl, an honorable member of parliament of Mathura constituency, a face that requires no introduction, that is not bound for any recognition. And for us, it is a dream come true to have Dream Girl as our special guest on the occasion of International Women's Day. Truly, I'm running short of words to speak anything about her. So rather than saying anything, I should say, I would request the technical team to play the video. I request the technical team to play the video.
I congratulate Dr. R.K. Agarwal, Chairman, Sri Pankaj Agarwal, Vice Chairman, and Dr. Neeta Awasthi, Director of GL Bajaj Group of Institutions, Mathura. Our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji, has emphasized on the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao and several other schemes to give importance to women and children and to give this day its due significance. Despite the right to equality for both women and men in Constitution, women were not allowed to work in certain areas. Now, women can work in any field according to their choice and interest. It has also been announced that women can now work in night shifts as well. And during this time, more attention will be given to their safety. Times have changed. Today, men and women are equal in every way. Women have proved their capabilities in every field, whether it is the corporate sector, administration, medical field, environment, etc. Apart from doing their most important duty, that of a housewife or a mother, today they walk and work shoulder to shoulder with their male counterparts and have proved that they are equal to men in every way. Hence, it is important that women are treated at par with men at homes and at their workplace, so that together they work for the betterment of society and our country. Even the budget allocation for women and children has seen a marked rise in the recently announced financial budget for this year. Let us try to bring this change in our homes, families, and our society. Let there be no disparity between men and women. I wish you all a happy International Women's Day. I assure all the women that whenever and wherever any of you from my constituency need me, I will do everything possible to help you out. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It is always a treat to the ears to listen to you. your encouraging voice. And I should say it's always a treat to the eyes also, because it gives us a sense of pleasure. Now, I take this opportunity to introduce our first speaker, Professor Neeta Avasthi, an alumnus of HBTU 1988, has put in 20 years in academics after switching from software consulting for 12 years. Her area of research is around the artificial neural network. She has more than 50 research papers, 3 books, and 3 research scholars who have completed their PhD under her able guidance. She has recently published a patent also. Academic administration has been her forte. She has been honored by Distinguished Academician and Outstanding Administrator by All India Council for Human Rights, Liberties and Social Justice. Aryabhat Samman has been bestowed upon her by Vigyan Bharati and National Physics Laboratory. With teaching, R&D and consultancy are added to academic administration. She turns out to be a complete package for a professor. Inclusive growth of all stakeholders has been her focus for growth of any college or university she has worked with. We welcome you, ma'am, to the panel discussion. Our second speaker, Mrs. Nashi Chauhan, esteemed director of Anand Niketan Group of Schools. She is an accomplished academician with a penchant for versatility and breaking upon new frontiers. Her predilection for scholastic knowledge and methodologies to improve and accelerate education practices was nurtured abroad. In her 40 years of experience in imparting quality teaching, she has been instrumental in establishing schools all over the length and breadth of India. And currently, the Anand Niketan Group of School continues to flourish under her able directorship. We welcome you, ma'am. Our next resource person is Mrs. Kanchi Khanna, a recipient of IC3's, a counseling-based approach to student recruitment admissions award 2019. Ms. Kanchi Khanna is an outreach and communications specialist. She worked as a communications designer and teacher for over a decade before taking an education management. She is passionate about the promotion of liberal education in India. Earlier as Director Outreach at Ashoka University, Director Communications and Outreach at Kriya University, and now as Senior Director Outreach and Admissions at Plaksha. We welcome you, ma'am. Our another speaker is Professor Swati Pal, Principal, Janki Devi Memorial College, University of Delhi. She has been a Charles Wallace Scholar as well as the first Asian to receive the John McGrath Theatre Studies Scholarship at Edinburgh University. She has several books and articles to her credit, papers at national and international conferences, and is a translator as well as a poet. She is the Vice President of the Indian Association for Commonwealth Literature and Language Studies, and an executive body member of the Indian Association for the Study of Australia. Professor Pal is the recipient of several awards, including just 2 days ago, the Women Empowerment Award for Legal Awareness by Bhagidari Jan Sahyog Samiti in collaboration with All India Confederation for Women Empowerment Through Education. Congratulations, ma'am. We welcome you. Our another speaker is Mrs. Shalini Bhadoria, who has been working as a lawyer from past 4 years. She entered this profession to fight her father's case, which was illegally imposed on him. However, it gradually became her passion and forte, entering a field which was completely different from the degree she obtained 13 years ago. Was very difficult, but she proved herself in the field. She is a renowned lawyer nowadays. She possesses analytical abilities, keen observation skills, and persuasiveness. She has handled many cases successfully in her professional career. She is the chairperson of Rajasthan Bar Council. We welcome you, ma'am. Our other speaker is Ms. Priyanka Bhatkoti. She is the school principal, a renowned educationist who is very actively involved in the development of educational best practices in the country. An alumni of the prestigious Convent of Jesus and Mary, Dehradun. She has taught at Premium Educational in Panjim and Gujarat, a University of Cambridge CELTA qualified professional. She works with the belief that quality education can easily be made accessible and affordable for all. She is an acclaimed resource person for training teachers. She is the chapter head for English Language Teachers Association of India, Delhi West. She is keenly involved with the development of curriculum and assessments at CBSE and other premier developmental agencies. The recipients of many awards by leading educational organizations. Her latest accomplishments are leading in the field of content development for teaching and especially with relation to the National Education Policy 2020. We welcome you, ma'am. I heartily welcome all our panelists, and now we are going to begin the panel discussion for which I suppose all of us are waiting for. Now I'll begin with the first round of questions. My first question is for Ms. Nashi Chauhan, Director, Anand Niketan Group of Schools. Ma'am, empowering women is still a challenge. Do you really think empowering women is really required? And what are the challenges in implementing it?
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, empowerment is the process which gives the right.
Ma'am, you are not audible.
Am I now?
You are audible.
Okay. Well, the empowerment
Yes, ma'am.
is the
Great.
process which gives the right to access opportunity without restrictions and limitations. We all know that. Now, imagine in 2021, we are still discussing the need to empower women. But it is required and it's the need for the day. When I can talk of myself, me as a woman, I have never in my wildest of dreams ever said or dreamt and said, I wish I was a man. Because there are so many times that I hear people, young girls or saying, wish I was a boy, or women saying, I wish I was a man. But why? Haven't we lost our confidence? It is because inferiority of women is ingrained in our culture. We all know that. When you're young, at home, the mother starts off, you can't do this, you're a girl. You have to sit like this, you're a girl. You can't go to this place because you're a girl. So a girl grows up with this. And this is ingrained within the girl. This mindset, I feel, has to be changed. Woman or man, we all have dreams. And if you dream big and you will achieve your goal, so we must put our heart and soul into it. See, we women somewhere lack that. So basically, women should be encouraged. That is also lacking at many a time, because empowerment of women is required for an equal, fair and sustainable society. And it is their fundamental right, isn't it? Half the women in this country don't even know what their rights are. Women, if given a chance, I feel, are capable of tackling things better. Why? Look at the ones who are running, are in charge of families and are in the house. And when you ask them, at times when they come to me and I ask her, what are you doing for it? I am just a housewife. And I always have to tell them that is the best profession going. Because that is where they're learning so much. And then, if given a chance, they're capable of tackling things better because they have a high emotional quotient. Definitely, women have that. Can make timely and balanced decisions. Think back and you know that this is what women can do, and they can multitask. See them taking care of a family, and the best one is that they are peace loving. So once they get empowered, and that's what we are looking at, they will be an asset, and it is their fundamental right. So why shouldn't they be an asset to the country? Well, with all this, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. The first challenge we have in this country is that we have to provide them education. How are we going to do that? Every girl, child, everywhere, the government should take care of this. See that all girls, it's compulsory for them to go to school. From the time they are young, see, I'm talking about real India, not about us. India is them who are living in the rural areas. They just know that they're just going to grow. And after that, when they've grown to a certain age, they're going to get married. They'll be married off and and produce children after that. Is there anything else that these poor girls know? They all have to be educated. There can be a rainy day in anyone's life. What are these girls going to do then? It's very difficult. Women have to be empowered now in our country. And I also feel somewhere that our women are not aware of health and hygiene. See, I'm again talking about the women of India. Psychology of the male-dominated society will never leave us. And perceiving women in India, I'm feeling ashamed to say that, but perceiving women as objects to be enjoyed. Many women go through this. Now, we have to uplift their status in the family also. Is a woman ever asked when decisions are being made, what is your opinion? Most of the time she's standing there or sitting there quietly. And again, I'm looking at all of us at that is that we should provide equal earnings. Now, well, let's hope soon we will be living in India where women play a big role in uplifting and running the country. But that is the need of the day. And I'm sure with the touch of women, we will live in a peaceful and happy country. See, what a woman can give to another human being, nobody else can. Because they've been mothers, they've been sisters, wives, and they have to take care of their mother-in-law, the in-laws, I would say, not only the mother-in-law. And so there's so much in them which we need to explore. And I think I'll end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. You very well said we have to bring the change. Women are capable of handling challenges, and definitely we all have to work together for that. Thank you. My next question is to Ms. Kanchi Khanna, Director Admissions Outreach, Plaksha. Ma'am, since the whole world is moving towards online mode of delivery, how do you ensure readiness of How do you ensure readiness of your respective field in using online platforms for teaching, learning, hearings, and in the corporate world also?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And I'm going to extend the conversation that Nashi ma'am had started, and really speak about education and women in education. The pandemic, put us in front of a very unprecedented situation. Within a week, the world had come to a stop, right? And we didn't know what to do. But we all know that women are better adapters than anyone. It's the women who help adapt not just the family, but the entire culture, the entire community. And we did adapt. And universities are supposed to be very good at flexibility and very, very nimble. And that's why universities have been around for centuries, where other institutions and organizations have died and they've lived their lives. But universities go on and on because they are so nimble. And when we were faced with this, we did quickly move online without batting an eyelid. But what we realized was that we were losing out on that face-to-face interaction with students, that deep engagement that the universities that I've been working with really profess. And but that also we found ways to do. We found ways to interact, engage online. It took a lot of time. But what I really saw challenging was, it was challenging for the women in my team, because earlier when they could very easily segregate, compartmentalize their lives, saying from morning 6 to 9, I'm at home. That's my time when I send my kids to school. Then from 9 to 6, I'm at office, and then I come back. They couldn't do that because the lines were blurred, right? You were working all the time, you were home all the time. And hats off, I would say, to all the teachers in this country who stepped up, and I see them working as late as 9 and 10 and 11 in the night when they were not doing that earlier. They would be home and they committed to a job which asked them for only half a day. But I've seen them step up, work for the betterment of their students, really help them, extra classes, extra hours. And not many of us were used to, and not many teachers were used to using online modes, but they did learn. They asked their students to help them. I've seen teachers who have asked their students to help them teach how to do it, and then learn quickly to create teaching aids which they are using, blackboards which they are putting against their sofas. So it's amazing, it's inspiring how we have stepped up, how we have taken this challenge on head on. And I think we've learned some very important life lessons in this whole thing, and we shouldn't let go of that. We've learned how easy it is to balance life. We've learned what is important to us. We've learned that we can learn from the younger generation. And I think those are values, those are things that I'm going to hold very dear to me. And I will definitely keep this knowledge with me. And I hope that we continue to use this in times to come and don't go back to things that weren't really working, but we believe that they did. The other thing that I really think that this online teaching and learning has brought about is more inclusivity in the whole education process. We are able to reach out to people in far-flung areas, in the cities, in smaller towns, in villages. I have personally interacted with people from Jammu and Kashmir, from Sitapur in Bulandshahr, from UP, from Bihar. And, just the fact that I just need a laptop to talk to them is amazing. Otherwise, for me to travel all that way, for them to travel, and the resource that we would have required, I think it's absolutely amazing what education has now reached the point. And I hope that this continues and we are more and more inclusive in our education policy. I'll just stop right here, but if you have any more questions, we'll be happy to answer.
We'll come to questions, ma'am, at a later stage. Kanchi ma'am, thank you so much. I totally agree with you that women are better adapters, and universities also have adopted few cultures. Now this has become the new normal, and definitely we miss the face-to-face interaction with our students. But yes, we have adapted to the things, and now we are ready for that. And yes, one more thing I would like to reiterate, that lines between work and home, seriously, they are blurred. Rather, I should say they have vanished. Now, everyone has learned that work-life balance, but we are working day and night, 24/7. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now, my other question is from Professor Neeta Avasti, Director, GL Bajaj Group of Institutions. Ma'am, what do you think is the major challenge for women as an administrator, as you are, the director of an engineering college?
Okay. I would like to continue with what Kanchi ma'am said, that we have learned so nicely to adapt, and for these ICT means. I say it like this: what a time to be alive. Right. So coming back to our question, that what about an administrator? Because I'm a director of an engineering college. I take a look back, and there I see 37 years back when I was in engineering college as a fresher. So engineering college was supposed to be a college of boys only college. So I switched from a girls only school to a boys only college. So there were boys, and they used to despise, and right now truly they look forward to talk to girls, but at that time they would despise, nahi ladki se baat karke aaya hai, types. So I started from there. So it was difficult. And as an administrator, if you ask me, it is always difficult. It is a patriarchal society. It is difficult for any man to accept a lady who is asking you to do something. They treat differently. I shouldn't say at their home, but they have seen different life back at home. So it is difficult. But accepting women as administrators, as colleagues, it is part of being in work right now. So I see that for me, it came up like automatically, because I didn't have to do anything. Because at home also, if we want to get something done, it is never easy. So we know, we find our ways out. We find what are the things which are important to us. We find what are the things which we can leave aside. So at least I have a very nice focus. What are the things I should concentrate on and what all I can leave. So sometimes I am very soft. Sometimes when I have to make the things done, I would say this is going to be this way only. Only that is the time I behave like a boss. Otherwise, I take up one way in which collaborating with everybody, taking everybody together, treating it as a team, and truly speaking, I learned everything in the society itself. So I think it's difficult, but not impossible. But yes, you have to be extremely good at what you are doing, doubly sure of what you are doing. As a woman, our intuitions are good. Our intentions, I should say at least, are very good. So I think we will all win, I hope. Thank you, Dr. Halim.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I completely agree with you. And I would like to go with your philosophy that what we should concentrate on and what we should leave. We all have to learn this. Yes, let go, let go. And ma'am, definitely it's a patriarchal society and we have to face challenges every day, from home to work, on the streets, everywhere. But we have to learn. We have to learn to face this. And we should be doubly sure before proceeding or taking any decision. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, our next speaker is Professor Swati Pal. My question is to you, Principal Janki Devi Memorial College, Delhi University. Ma'am, do you really feel women are facing challenges in empowering their dreams? If yes, or maybe no, then how? What is your take on this?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And of course, to begin with, a very happy International Women's Day. It's great to be part of such a fantastic panel. My college is a women's college. I have 3,300 women students in this college. I also have a faculty strength of about 150 teachers, of which the majority obviously are women, because entry by males into the faculty in Delhi University colleges started much later. The question actually for me is almost rhetorical. Do women face challenges? Of course they do. They are still very, very severely constrained. They are still very, very severely challenged despite the kind of achievements that we keep hearing or seeing or noting. Today, all of us sitting here are achievers. And that is why I sometimes feel we can be lulled into the false belief that the challenge is over. Not at all. We come from a very, very privileged location. My college, Janki Devi Memorial College, those of you who may not have heard about it, it's a 60-year-old Delhi University college. And it was built primarily with the intention of empowering women who belong to this area, you know, the Rajendra Nagar, Karol Bagh area of Delhi. My founder was given the land on which Maitri College and Jesus and Mary College are located. But he chose to take on this area because he said that this area belongs to mercenaries who do not like to send their girl children to school, leave alone college. So he felt it would be very important to build a college here. So initially, of course, the college had girls belonging to a very, very lower strata of society. And even today, and I've been part of this college for the past 26 years, even today, we have at least 40% of our students who come from households which some of us can only imagine. I've had students whose father may have been a DTC driver. I have students whose mother may have been a sex worker. I've had students whose mother may have been domestic help in somebody's household. Now, obviously, for girls who come from such a strata of society, it is not easy. To begin with, they are still told, why are you studying? Padh likh ke hoga kya? This notion that a woman, money spent or invested in a woman's education is not worth it, has not gone away. Let's not fool ourselves. It's not gone away at all. We are looking at the creme de la creme. When we look at facts and figures, if you look at various reports, you know, they may tell you that the gender gap vis-a-vis education has, you know, narrowed down, but you also have other reports made by some very important organizations that will tell you that it's still a very dismal scene. The pandemic has further enhanced, you know, this gender divide. It's not made it easier for women. So in a family, especially a lower strata family, in which there would probably be one laptop or one mobile phone to be shared amongst people, let me tell you that it is not my women students who get premium over their male counterparts. So if you're talking about, if the question was, are women challenged today? Yes, they are. I don't like the stereotypical, you know, cliche that is kind of bandied around that women are women's worst enemies. I hate it. It really annoys me. But the fact is, and you know, Nashi Chauhan spoke about it in the beginning when she says that we, you know, have internalized so many things that it has become a part and parcel of our psyche. And very often this is what happens actually. It is actually a truism that very often we women, though we can be such a fantastic sisterhood, and if we only just encourage each other, we can really take society forward, you know, but sometimes we don't do that. I'm not saying we always don't do that, but sometimes we don't do that. We kind of pull each other down. You know, a mother who has suffered a lot is also afraid. There is always this fear. My daughter should not suffer. She should not be beaten up. She should not be abused. And so she's told, be quiet. You know, Nashi ji, I want to tell you that the reason why we women sometimes stop other women from doing radical things is because we fear for them. We fear for their safety. So fear for the safety of women still remains such a big challenge. So, I think I better stop, because if you get me started off on what are the challenges facing women and are women really challenged, I can tell you that I can probably write a little thesis on it. But I can also, I don't want to end on a negative tone. I don't want to end this question on a negative tone. I do want to state that there is a lot of sensitization that is happening. And I think what is important and interesting is that men are being sensitized. Men are being, made to think about the fact that these gender stereotypes have to be broken and we have to give space to women. So that is my answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. I completely agree. Men should be sensitized more. We always keep on teaching girls and everyone around us that girls should be sensitized. Rather, it should be the other way around. And ma'am, we all are achievers. Definitely, I agree with you. But the challenges, they are continuing and they are going to continue for a long time. Till the time we are here, we have to face challenges. Thank you so much, ma'am. Shalini ma'am, are you here? I can't see you. Shalini ma'am, if you are here, please turn on your camera so that I can ask you the question. Shalini Bhadoria ma'am. Ma'am, please turn on your camera.
She has. She's under the name Shalu Singh.
Yes, Shalu Singh. Yes. Okay. So, Shalini ma'am, Chairperson, Rajasthan Bar Council. Ma'am, my question to you is, what do you think is the major challenge for women in the field of law, or maybe as a lawyer?
Hello, everyone. First of all, happy Women's Day to all.
Thank you so much. And same to you.
Thanks. Yes, Arlene, I agree. In every field, women face problems. And in law field, I'm sure women always feel uncomfortable with colleagues and society. And we still live in a modern society, but gender inequality is still evident in several professions, and including law also. And according to data published by American Bar Association Market Research Development, women comprise only 36% of legal professionals. Though the number of women is growing in the legal areas, but they don't have equal access to senior positions. And as we have recently seen, in skin-to-skin contact judgment, people very easily start questioning about the intelligence of women judges. And lack of work-life balance is one of the major obstacles that female lawyers face, and it is challenging for a woman, particularly single mother. Workplace harassment studies show that more than 1 in 3 women in legal field still experience sexual harassment. So, one thing I want to say that women को बहुत ज्यादा वो नहीं करना चाहिए कि ऑलवेज हम डरें कि हमें कहाँ जाना है क्या नहीं. फर्स्ट फाइट हमें अपने फैमिली से ही स्टार्ट करनी होती है. लाइक इन आवर डेली लाइफ वुमेन्स के ऊपर बहुत सारी जिम्मेदारियां होती हैं, तो हमें अपनी फैमिली को भी लेके चलना है, बच्चे भी हैं हमारे सब हैं. तो मेरे लिए इस फील्ड में आना एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मान लो या कुछ भी मान लो, बट अभी मेरा ड्रीम बन गया है कि मुझे इसमें आके बहुत लोगों की हेल्प करनी है, वुमेन्स की, स्पेशली फॉर वुमेन्स. अभी हमारा एक रिसेंट में जजमेंट हुआ था, साबरमती इशू हुआ था, एवरीवन नोज आई थिंक, एंड आई थिंक द जजमेंट रिप्रेजेंट्स टू clashing stands. One set of opinion believes what is done, the ages has the right to continue in the way, but the other set of opinion believes that because it was happening for a long period of time, it doesn't mean it's right. And we have constitution, therefore it is a constitutional morality. We have to adhere to even one woman wants to who cannot be stopped because of physiological reason. That's what a judgment says. And definitely in a clash between the right of equality and right to practice in a religion. Many judgments have proved that right to equality shall prevail. Today, we live in a society where women are treated as untouchable. No, this is not true. Dear National Secretary, so I believe that allowing women entry in a temple has given us a small victory in a war.
Shalini ma'am, I have one question related to the temple that I would like to ask all the panelists. तो इस question के बारे में हम थोड़ी देर में बात करेंगे.
Okay, it's okay.
हाँ जी. अगर आप पहले क्वेश्चन के बारे में if you wish to say something you can add on, otherwise I'm sorry मैंने आपको बीच में इंटरप्ट किया, लेकिन मैं सबके टेक लेना चाहूंगी इस क्वेश्चन पे.
Okay, sure. Actually, I was not prepared for this panel discussion because in early morning, Mr. Anshuman Singh, who was the earlier governor in Rajasthan, Jaipur, and a chief justice in the High Court, has passed away in the morning, early morning.
Okay.
So, in the High Court,
I know, Shalini ma'am. It's absolutely okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I completely agree कि लोग women के caliber को उनके ऊपर questions करते हैं. They most of the times do that. They don't feel that women are equal to males. But yes, we are proving gradually those things. Thank you so much, ma'am. Priyanka Bhatkoti ma'am, are you here? Priyanka ma'am, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Hi,
Okay.
ma'am. Good afternoon. And
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon to Nashi ma'am, Kanchi ma'am. I can see her there. Grateful to be in the presence of such luminaries. Swati ma'am there, ma'am. Your garden and what your students are doing is amazing, Swati ma'am. And your poems inspire. Yeah.
Priyanka ma'am, thank you so much for joining. Priyanka ma'am, I have a question for you. The question is, how can women empower themselves? Because this is a big challenge. Everywhere we are hearing the question or the term women empowerment and all. So my question is, how can women empower themselves? Is there any tool, any technique?
Yes, I think first and foremost, we have to have the belief in ourselves. The more we look at others telling us that we are strong, nothing is going to happen. I don't think anybody can do what women can do, because we are the ones who are the hand that rocks the cradle will rock the world. Gentlemen can't do it. Not in a long while, and yes, cloning is on its way. But what women can do, we are like the Mother Earth. We are nurturers. We are nurturers by nature. Only thing is, somewhere down the ages, we forgot the strength because there was a role that was given to us. Now we may be playing many roles. Yes, we may be teachers, we may be actors, we might be earning, but let's not forget what our individuality is. Yes. There are so many hats that we wear in a given day, but here I don't think any post or designation can sum up the power of a woman. The second part, we have to learn to invest in ourselves. You know, we take care of everybody around us, but we don't take care of ourselves. Be it our health, it will be our last priority. Be it our own learning, be it spending 5 minutes for our own self. We'll take out hours for our family members. We will make accommodations for everybody in our professional space there. That 5 minutes which we need to give ourselves is the recharge button. So if we are strong, the potential always flows from high to low. If our own potential is low, how will we nurture the people around us? So the energy has to flow from the woman, be it in the house or be it in our workplace. I respect gentlemen tremendously. It's our fathers, it's our brothers, it's our spouses who give us wings. They are the backbone. That's the next part, you know. We as women, when we talk about equality, we have to talk about equal contribution, not just in the home space, but even in the income space. Somewhere we have to keep the balance that if we are contributing to the income does not mean we stop contributing to the home space. You know, we are earning and we are empowered means also that we are empowered by our homes. Look at the part of the online work. The pandemic came, every home has shared the workspace with the organization. Yes. And wherever ladies had the support of the home, their careers rock. I'm sure there is a reason, or you know, we would like to reverse that. They say behind every successful man there is a woman, but behind every successful woman out there, there are many men, from the father to the brothers, to the spouse that you get, and the sons that we have, or the boys, or the gentlemen that we have in our classes there. Let's remember that part. It is very, very important. We are who we are because of the people around us, and the world around us is made up of both gentlemen and ladies. You know, it's not a uni-gender space that we live in. So that part has to come equally. You know, we must respect the gentlemen if we are expecting them to hold the door for us. If I'm the host in the school, what is the harm in for me to open the door for my director? You know, it's not the other way around. So let us be equal players. So if I am earning and there is another gentleman who's there in the lunch and there are 15 of us going Dutch, then I shouldn't expect that everybody is paying for my lunch, because there are no free lunches in life. Nothing comes for free. The moment you give away a space from your life, you are giving away your right in a manner. So let's be assertive of our rights, assertive of our place in the kitchen. That no, I will cook. You might not like my cooking so much, but I am the mother. So some part of it you will like here. Okay, I will work at becoming better. Let's be assertive of our place and time and space with ourselves. That look, okay, I might not look like X, Y, and Z, but there is no other Priyanka. So many times people will come and compliment you are wearing something very nice, and I'll say very happily that it's looking nice because I'm wearing it. So I choose to believe that I'm good. So let's have that belief in us, because somewhere or the other, the people, the family, the nurturers, Nashi ma'am trained me tremendously. I have to pay homage to this wonderful woman of substance here. Nashi ma'am, I don't think I deserve the same platform here, but I'm rejoicing tremendously you are here. So I can say this to you publicly. 10 seconds she took and she said that you are part of my team here and you will do this and you will do that. I don't know where she recognized. She gave me opportunities to learn, to try out strength. So we, the women, sometimes become boundaries to the other women around us. Women have to learn to nurture women. Women competition is tough competition. It's cutthroat competition. We have to stand in collaboration. We have to take up for each other there. And if that strength between the women is not there, the others will always take advantage of our weakness. So we have to be strong in our unity. So that's it, Harleen ma'am. I'm sure everybody there is fantastic with what they have shared.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Definitely, we have to support each other and we have to be very assertive for our rights. And moreover, ma'am, I would like to say something. Women are better managers than men. This is one thing. But yes, we can't move without the support of men. So,
Harleen, I have to make a little bit of change out there. We have to be very assertive of our responsibilities.
Right.
The moment we are responsible, you know, the rights will automatically come. Nobody can take away our rights if we are responsible. But if we are irresponsible in our area of our responsibility, no right in paper will be right in action for us. Please, this is what we have to learn here. We have to be very assertive of our responsibilities.
Definitely, ma'am, definitely. And it's moreover mutual respect for both the genders. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Now, I move on to the second round of question. I have one question that is a very sensitive issue, but still, I have a question I would like all of you to answer. We all have heard about rifts for women's entry in various temples, like Sabrimala and Shani Temple of Nanded. I would like to request all the panelists to give their opinion in the following order. First, I would like to request Nashi ma'am to express her opinions.
Well, that's something that you can't even talk about. It was disgusting. I'm sorry I'm using that word. It definitely was disgusting, because whatever your belief when it comes to a religion is concerned, whether you are a man or you're a woman, you're rich or you're poor, the temple is a public place and everyone has an equal right to worship there. So who came up with this idea and why, I really won't go into the details, but women's entry into some temples is a very discriminating action which should not be allowed. I think the Supreme Court then took up the case and they had sort of allowed them. But we all have equal rights to practice religion. I mean, when you go and pray, you don't sort of, no, it's not that you're in the temple, there's a man praying, there's a woman praying, they both praying for whatever they want. And it's been equally, whoever is there, whoever you're praying to is listening to it. So this ban actually violates equality of women under the Indian Constitution too, and is prejudiced against the women's right to worship. There is a clause in that also. So women in India are more actually, if you look at it, I'm not a person who goes to a mandir. About me, my mandir is my school. I've always said that, and I really don't visit. Whenever I am in the school, I feel I'm in a mandir with my little children who are more than God to me. And what I've noticed that women in India are more spiritually inclined. You see more women in the temple than you see men, and this. So when it comes to barring their entry, how does it feel? It was a little shameful, whatever happened, and I wonder what would have happened if some mandir had said only women can come to this temple, men can't. There would have been a riot after that. So it does sort of barring their entry raises a question on constitutional morality of our nation. It definitely does. It is also conflict between women's rights and traditions. Now, when I read this question yesterday, and I sort of smiled to myself, because I read a book on British Raj sometime back, and it had talked about the British and some clubs that they had all over the city. Calcutta had the best club, and in the book I read that they put a notice outside saying dogs and Indians are not allowed. So when in 2021, or this happened in 2020, I think, or 19, I'm not very sure, you are barring women from entering a temple, and that also a temple. Those were bars, those were clubs. And at that time, there was such a revolt regarding that. How many people revolted to this except for the women? I think it was just passed as, okay, you can't do it, you are a woman. So that's all I can say about this, because I am not the type to go into these kinds of things in detail. But all the same, I feel it was something that should never, never, never have happened. Not at a worship place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, I would like to the same question to Kanchi ma'am.
Thank you to Nashi ma'am again for putting it so well. For me, I'd like to say it's a positive step. The highest court in the country has said that this women should be allowed because of their right to equality, their right to freedom of religion, right to pray. And I think it's going to, but I still think it's going to take a lot of time before we can actually change the mindsets and let people understand it's important for us to be treated equally. Like ma'am said, it's age-old traditions. They'll take an age to get over, but it's a step in the right direction. And I completely hope that we do uphold what the Constitution has given us. Having said that, I don't think we should allow it to pull us down because our own Indian scriptures tell us that there are multiple ways to reach God. One may be going to the temple, the other may be by being a good human being. And I think if we do that, we are, as it is, close to God. while we fight these battles, win the wars, I think we should continue to hold on to the strength that we are as dear to God as anyone else, as any other gender. I take strong objection to the fact that if I am a menstruating woman, the temple needs to be purified after my visit. That's a society that's letting me down, because it's a life force that comes from my body. And definitely that's not acceptable. So I think we all need to see this through, that what the highest court of the country has said, it becomes acceptable. But let us not pull this down. Let this not pull us down at all.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Neeta Awasthi, ma'am, your take on this? Ma'am, you are muted. Unmute yourself.
Dr. Helene, I have listened to Nashi ma'am and Kanchi ma'am. Before answering this, I would really like to listen to all the panelists. If you can really give me that privilege, if you can put me at the last.
Okay, ma'am. Swati, ma'am, can we hear your take?
Yes, yes. It's not a very easy thing. It's not a very easy question to answer. And so for just 1 minute, I'm going to play the devil's advocate. Because in principle, I doubt if anybody can disagree with either what Nashiji said or what Kanchi said. I don't think we can disagree. There's no point of disagreement in that, especially, and I must share a little story about menstruation and visiting temples with you, Kanchi. I will do that. But for just 1 minute, I will play the devil's advocate, and I will remind us all that when the 5-member bench, passed the verdict, the one dissenting voice came from the woman. The remaining were all men, and they said that that women should be allowed to enter the temples. Now, let us look at why she said what she said. Why did she dissent? She dissented because she said that these are very orthodox matters. This is a religious matter, and the court should not interfere with religious orthodoxy. And she also said that unless somebody who is very aggrieved comes from that section and makes a case before us, the court should not on its own pass a verdict. Now, it is important to understand that religious orthodoxy must also be given the same freedom as all other, ways of worshipping. That, as I said, I was playing the devil's advocate. Now, having played the devil's advocate, let me actually speak my heart. And my heart tells me that if we are talking about one of the pillars of the Indian Republic, the Indian Constitution, is equality for all, then, as Kanchi said so beautifully, that, why should a menstruating woman who has the life force within her be, why should the temple be purified after she leaves? And I so agree with you. My father, he is no more. He passed away when I was 18. But I remember that I went up to him. I'm one of four sisters. We are 4 sisters. We don't have a brother. So I'm the youngest. And I remember that, I used to keep hearing things being said about the fact that if you're menstruating, you can't go for the puja. You can't go to the puja ghar. And you can't even get married, by the way, on the day that you are menstruating. So I don't know what women do if they're menstruating on the day that they get married, as per Hindu rituals. Possibly pop a whole lot of pills, which are not good for them. So I went to my father, and he was a staunch Hindu. He was also quite ritualistic. He was a Kali, worshipper. But he was also a person who was open to religion. In the army, he was an army doctor. You go to the temple, you go to the church. So he brought us all up in Christian schools. But we went to the Gurudwara. I lived in Lucknow for several years. I'm quite well aware of all the Muslim traditions and used to spend the greater part of my day there. So when I asked him that, Baba, Durga Puja is, for Bengalis, which is what I am, a very important festival. And I said that, I'm going to be starting my chums tomorrow. So should I be going? And my father He was a doctor, of course. And with his education, but also with his religion, told me, are you comfortable going for the puja? So I said, yeah. I mean, I, of course, used to look forward to it. So I said, of course I am. So he said, if you are comfortable, then don't think about it. Go ahead. Now, he said that when I was once upon a time very young. He said that then. And it must have been such, I'm very proud about the fact that he was so progressive for his time and age. Because look at what he must have internalized. So my point is that it is a very, very complex question, because all kinds of attributes related to cleanliness, related to, and that's true not only of the Hindu religion, but it is also true of all religions. This whole thing about being clean when you are performing a ritual or entering into what is called a sacred space. So I think that we really need to relook the idea of purity. Until the idea of purity changes in the minds of people, this problem is not going to go away. A law, you may enforce as many laws as possible, but the minds of people have to change in this direction. That's my take on it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Shalini, ma'am, if you are here.
She said she had to leave. She's just written.
Okay. Yes, I saw her message now. Priyanka, ma'am, your take on this.
Again, Swati ma'am, you've articulated beautifully, and playing the devil's advocate role was very courageous, very, very courageous there. Because, you know, Harley, we have to understand that to any issue, there are two sides to the problem. It's not just one view. That would be simplifying things and not taking them in the proper context. As a teacher, no, I was always taught that context is very important. Now, look at a simple example. See, all the people are very erudite. I'm talking about the pandemic, and mask wearing is mandatory. Yes, it is required at this point of time for all of us. Yeah. Here, I have my mask too, ma'am. Here, mask. So sanitizers are required. Now, let's come to a situation after 2 years that the virus has disappeared and it is safe. But at that point of time, if the norms continue that it is mandatory to move in public spaces with a mask, it would be a practice which is a redundant practice. It would become an inconvenience. It is a practice which would have outlived its utility and would have become an inconvenience there. Yes? So similarly, there are areas where people were always in the habit of having food before sunset. The logic was that if there is light, you are able to see what you are eating. There is no insect, there is no impurity into it. But once light came and other stuff came out there, you could have, food late into the night, cook it also easily out there. So there are some things which may have come as a practice because it was required at that point of time. But gradually, when time and space and habits and social consciousness has changed out there over a period of time, we have to look at those things and again retrospect, reflect, and create a transition period which is not at conflict with who we are. Very important, very, very important, because at the end of the day, what is worship? It is our communion with God. Yes, and if we have temples, if we have churches, if we have mosques out there, to directly to talk with God or to commune with God, we only have to have that thought process, and I'm sure there's a higher being who listens. So nobody can stop a woman from praying. And at the end of the day, if we can pray and if we can take care of ourselves, we can take care of others, we will be in all the spaces where we deserve to be. So again, the more deserving we become, all those things will automatically come to us. But a transition has to be worked out, which is not in conflict with each other. So here we have to be very reasonable. We have to be very sensible about all these parts out there. And I love the part, ma'am, Swati ma'am, I was not aware that amongst the 5 bench, the lady out here raised the question, because at that point when these rules and these rituals might have been framed, maybe they were very right. But over a period of time, we need to relook. And not just this, there are so many other practices in society across the world over, and especially in India, what we don't find relevant, we will have to let go of. And what is more relevant and what is more important, we will have to embrace and rejoice in. So I'm sure India is a democracy, and we people out here with education, with the sensitivity that we look at things out there and developed consciousness, all these matters will automatically get settled out there. So, the Supreme Court is there, the will of the people is there, the women are there, but look at the part, are we comfortable? If we are comfortable, we should be there. If we are not comfortable, we should not be there, because at the end of the day, it is also a matter of belief. And beliefs are what are also an important part of anybody's identity. And we need to respect each other. Harleen, you might be coming from another space. Nashi ma'am and Kanchi may be from another space out there. So one thing that we should not compromise is on respect for each other, because in that diversity, that respect also has to be held sacrosanct. That's my take on it.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say that the lady's name was Justice Indu Malhotra.
Okay, great. A very, very, very erudite and very knowledgeable one. And she's given such very important justices at that point of time. Ma'am, I will go back and read on to it again. That's my learning for the day.
Neeta ma'am?
I was just listening very carefully to my panelists, and thank you so much. So many points have been given to me.
Am I audible now?
Yes. Yes, ma'am, you are.
So the first thing is, it was said that temples are not are a public place. So the correction is temples are really not public place; they are private spaces. Number 2, Kanchi ma'am said that the temple was cleaned thereafter. So that was not Sabriwala, that was a Shani temple which was cleaned, and that was cleaned because that girl moved on and got inside the Chabutra, where actually nobody goes there, only the head priest goes there. That was the second thing. Swati Pal ma'am said about the religion or orthodoxy. So we say tradition. And I'm just wondering, when the churches are independent of, the states don't interfere with churches, then why do they interfere with temples? That is third thing. So before going further, let us understand what Sabrimala temple is all about. This temple is located in Kerala. There are other temples in Kerala where men are not supposed to enter. There are days and days when roads are emptied for women, so that the women can pray their Lord the way they want to. No man can see that, let alone enter there. This is diversity of our culture. Now let us understand the concept behind Sabrimala temple. The deity, who is the deity? The deity is Lord Ayyappa. He is the son of Shiva and Mohini. Now Mohini is Vishnu. Lord Ayyappa has taken an eternal vow of brahmacharya, which is known as Naishtika brahmacharya. That is brahmacharya or celibacy till death. Now these are similar vows that many saints nowadays and eternally they have been taking up, and even many sannyasinis take these vows. There is a restriction on women of certain age. That is precisely 10 to 50 years of age to enter the temple. Now, this is the age where someone may have emotion for the deity as a lover, which, again, traditionally speaking, which is bad for the deity, because deity is there, Murtirup Vidyaman there. That is the tradition says. Now, many of the so-called liberals have associated this with menstruation, which is wrong. There are temples which worship the physical process of menstruation. You know about Kamakhya temple in Guwahati, all of us know. Actually, it is like this. The priest is considered to be talking to the deity. That is Lord Ayyappa in this case. And the whole temple administration works as per the will of Lord Ayyappa. There is a complete procedure based on which head priest is appointed or selected, based on parents, location, his own horoscope, and finally the will of Lord Ayyappa. Similar procedure of selecting head priest of Badrinath temple exists. Even Shankaracharya are selected this way. This is an accepted procedure by Supreme Court under Article 15 of Constitution of India. We have a lawyer here. Remember, it is not the issue of gender, society, or misogyny. There is no restriction on women to enter the temple. Remember, exclusion is not discrimination. They are two different things. This is the issue of presenting or protecting our tradition. Rather, this is an issue of presenting our traditions in a distorted manner. This is an issue of emptying our roots, and wherein the vacuum will be filled up by anything else, just anything else. So I am absolutely against it. And so Supreme Court has given its verdict. Again, some petitions have been filed. So if you ask me yes or no, precisely I say I am against it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think whatever you people have said, I am no one to say this, but yes, just one line. It should be left to the choice of the individuals rather than imposing the things, if I can say this. Anyway, okay, now thank you so much. Now we are moving on to the last round, third round of questions. I think we can begin with Kanchi ma'am because she has to leave. So Kanchi ma'am, the question for you is, how can women play an instrumental role in uplifting the society?
That's such a large question, which will probably take ages to answer. But in a very short manner, in how I can help, or people, women like me can help. I think education is very empowering. And what we can do is take education, and not just education, but quality education to every corner of the country, to make sure that every woman has got the opportunities that she deserves. In my time, in these last decade or so that I've been working in admissions, I've realized that each student gets a different set of opportunities. Potential shows itself in many different ways. And aspirations of a student are very different. So to be judging each and every student on one test or on what marks they are scoring doesn't help. So if all students, and I'm making this a little bit more inclusive, not just talking about women, but I think if we look at holistic admissions, if we look at the opportunities that a student has got and how that student has pushed himself to make use of that opportunities, and then give them opportunities to grow and become individuals, is very important. Having said that, I've realized that in my teams, having women to do this, to play this role has always worked in our favor, because they go beyond numbers. They look at the qualitative aspects of applicants. They look at what opportunities they've got, what opportunities they've used, their backgrounds, like Swati mentioned. I've interacted with students from the slums. I've interacted with students who are sex workers, children, and we've made offers to them. We've completely waived off tuitions for them. We've made sure that they are comfortable in our universities. And Plaksha itself is really is working very hard to get women into tech, because tech is a field which was primarily for boys and men, like you mentioned earlier. So I think we can all fight this battle together to make education inclusive in terms of race, in terms of gender, in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds. And if we do that, we'll really uplift society, and not just the gender battle. We need to fight so many battles on so many fronts. That's really what I have to say. Pass on to the other panelists now. Thank you so much for having me here. But before I leave, I'd like to say that was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Swati, I'd really like to connect with you offline. You have to tell me what you were going to.
I will. Thank you so much. If you can take my email ID from the organizers, we can keep in touch.
Absolutely. Keep in touch with all of you.
Thank you so much, Kanchi ma'am. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure
Same
having
here.
you. So now my question is to Nashi ma'am. Ma'am, how can women contribute to bring a positive change in today's world?
It's a very nice question. Now we have to start talking about that to build a better tomorrow. Investing in women empowerment is very important. That's how I look at it. Women are the most powerful tools. They can bring a positive change in the world. Now why? There are certain reasons where you feel what women are strong is. There are quite a few, I can't mention them all, but the ones that I really feel will bring in the change if they are strong emotionally. Aren't we? All of us as women are very strong emotionally. And we are also more grounded. Then we are capable of unleashing men's potential too. See, when you're working, you realize all this. And why all this? Because women have played such roles in their lives. You can look into the history of India. There were women who played such roles. And now you can see in the country, our finance minister is a woman. Okay? So, I also feel there are excellent managers. They are taskmasters, they are leaders, it goes on and on. Because these are skills they possess to take care of a family. As a mother, as a wife, as a daughter-in-law, it goes on and on, as a sister. And it's women who bond a family together. If they are given equal opportunities, with no gender bias, women can lead to they can even lead to, say, end of poverty in the country. If given the same opportunities in education, which is very, very important. I think she has already spoken about that. And jobs. Women will definitely bring a positive change in today's world. I'm very positive about that. Because I've seen while working, I've been working now, all my teachers, I always feel that they're very strong. It's just that we have to give them the opportunity. The other day, I was looking at, on the TV, I saw that the Usha machine people have given jobs to a lot of women in the villages. And they were showing how they're working, and they were so happy stitching clothes and helping out, to distribute clothes to people during the pandemic. So given an opportunity, they can really, really do. Look at the Seva organization, how much they do there. So all I can say is that women have the potential to improve livelihood, economy, productivity, and most of all, human life. Through nurturing a happier, productive, and peaceful environment, because this is their forte. The world today needs peace, doesn't it? It needs tolerance, values, and above all, respect for each other. That's just been forgotten. Look at the way all that is going on in the world. And a woman has all these attributes. So they can contribute to bring a positive change in today's world, given a chance. I also strongly believe that women, if given the opportunity, can definitely contribute towards making our country a peaceful and happy country. Because there is so much they can contribute as far as this is concerned, because there is tolerance in it. So I hope that does convince you that women can contribute to change today's world. And I'm very positive that they can. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now, my question is to Swati, ma'am. Swati, ma'am, how can women contribute in implementation of NEP 20 in higher education?
That's really interesting, a very important question actually, because we have to get down now to the task of actually implementing the policy. And between, T.S. Eliot speaks about there's a poem called The Hollow Men, where he speaks about the big divide, or the big gap between the idea and the reality. So, there is something like an idea, and when you actually have to implement it, the praxis, you realize that there is a big gap which becomes very difficult to bridge. Having said that, as far as the NEP is concerned, I'm not going to say I'm a specialist on the NEP. I am working my way to understanding the NEP, and we have constant discussions on it. It's a huge document, and its implications are immense and many. But one of the positive aspects of the NEP actually is the kind of focus, I think, that is through various ways being made on gender parity and the whole idea of inclusivity of men and women, the kind of parity that should exist, the kind of inclusivity that should happen when it comes to women. The focus of the NEP on that is, of course, something that I find a very, very positive thing. There are other very positive aspects which I would like to dwell upon. One of them being that there is a fund, there is a gender inclusion fund that is available, which is to ensure 100% participation of girls in schooling. So in terms of the NEP ideologically as being a very gender-centric or a woman-centric policy, I feel that there are tremendous possibilities. There's a lot of potential there. However, I think, since the question was that how should women implement it, I think how women should implement it is to, firstly, whoever are the women who are actually going to facilitate the implementation should ensure that there is a transparency in the usage of the gender inclusive fund. That's the first thing. Very often funds are created by the government, but there is always a distinct possibility of them being misused. So the first important contribution, I think, of women, and I'm talking about the women who are going to be key facilitators in implementation of the NEP, would be to ensure that this fund is used. The second, used correctly. The second thing that I want to focus on is the fact that, like I said, that the idea of gender inclusivity and the lack of discrimination, prevention of discrimination between the genders is very important. But we have to look at traditional methods of teaching. We have to look at texts and how they are taught. And it is my observation as an educator now that both in school as well as in higher education institutions, while on the one hand, we keep talking about gender parity, yet very often we see that, the representation of women being shown to doing a certain kind of task. for example, even images of women are shown in a particular way, and language again is not sensitive. Language is a very nuanced thing. I still remember how Indira Gandhi so many years ago changed the nomenclature from chairman to chairperson, and that was a very important intervention. So I think the way in which language is used in texts for school and colleges, the kind of teaching learning modules that we actually create have to be very, very particular in addressing this whole issue of gender parity if we want the aims and ideals of the NEP to be actually successful. Okay, so these are some of the ideas that I have in terms of the correct implementation of the NEP. It could be by both men as well as by women, because the NEP is going to be implemented by educationists who are both men as well as women. There is one of the other aspects that I'd want to talk about is that the NEP talks about setting up female role models, which has a kind of it has a trigger effect or a multiplier effect. Now that's something I really like, and I feel that as a community of women here, there are men too. It's a very important thing to set up role models who are followable. You have to set up a role model whom you can follow. Don't make it so improbable and so impossible that it becomes just a distant dream. So this is the way I feel that we could implement some of the the focus on gender that the NEP is pointing us to. That's what I had to say, and I will, unfortunately, it is 3:53, and in exactly 2 minutes, I have to join a program that my college has set up for equal opportunities for women, and I would need to be there. So I will take your leave, and I would just like to thank everybody, and the director, GL Bajaj. I would like to specially thank you. I really like the very calm and very reasoned way in which you explained the last question to all of us. When I played the devil's advocate, it was actually, it was said that I was being courageous, but I salute your courage in being able to, it's really good, and we need this. We need this, and you had your facts absolutely clear. And that is what really made it so substantial. So I'd like to congratulate you and all the other women whom I have so enjoyed listening to. Thank you very much. And Shravan, a big thank you to you for considering me, credible enough to join this time. Thank you so much.
Swati ma'am.
Yes.
Just can we have a photograph before you leave?
Sure, I would love that.
Can you switch on all the panelists? Please, can they switch it on? Harleen ma'am, can you please take a shoot?
Ma'am, actually, Priyanka ma'am she's not right now in the panel because she has left. She had a very urgent meeting. Same is the case with Shalini madam also, and Nashi madam. No, Nashi ma'am is here. Kanchi ma'am also. So we have already taken screenshots. We can click one pic. Fine. I'll take a screenshot of all of you.
I want to take a screenshot with the director, and with Nashi, since she's still here.
Yes, I'm taking many. Swati ma'am, I'll forward to you. I have taken many. I can't miss the opportunity of having all of you together. I have taken.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Ma'am, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Swati ma'am. Okay, now my question is to Neeta ma'am. Neeta ma'am, yes. What is our society needing the most in present time, and especially from women?
I think two things. We need to have wings and we need to have roots. Wings, education. Roots are traditions. When I say education, it can be professional education. Roots I say that at least for once, go back and read your scriptures on original, because everything has been so much distorted that we are really losing our roots. And there is a false modernhood coming up, which is really not an Indian modern woman. Indian modern woman is modern by thoughts. She knows what to do, what not to do. So I would request everybody who is here, and right now we have 71 people here, that I think it is wings and roots, education to all, education to women, certainly. I totally agree with Nashi ma'am, and I really salute her efforts that she has put in the last 40 years doing it. But I would say that certainly all of us should read our scriptures so that we cannot be confused with other things. Thank you so much, Dr. Halim.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. To sum up, this session is a very difficult task because all of you have given such relevant views and we have lot many takeaways from the day. And especially I was enlightened about Sabrimala temple, the base and all. It was seriously enriching. And rest all the things, the conditions are theoretically and practically exactly different. And we all have to work together. We have to learn to overcome our fears and support each other. That is another takeaway. And today, all of you gave very relevant inputs about this topic. And I think everyone present over here is truly enriched. And we all have to learn to build a better tomorrow. And there should be transparency in our system. Maybe it could be funds, it could be a deliberation of education or anything. There has to be transparency. And prevention of gender discrimination should be here. So I thank all of you. And now I hand over to Dishi to continue further.
Thank you, Harleen ma'am, and each and every panelist. Indeed, there is no limit to what we as women accomplish. A woman gets strength from her trouble, smile when distressed, and grows even stronger with prayers and hope. At last, I request Mr. Vipin Dhiman, Registrar, GL Bajaj Group of Institution, to extend a hearty vote of thanks to all the panelists and participants.
Thank you, Dishi. Good afternoon, all. As all good things come to an end in life, so as the discussion. On behalf of GL Bajaj Group of Institutions, Mathura, I take this opportunity to propose a formal vote of thanks to those who have contributed in this virtual discussion on role of women in shaping the society organized by a women cell. At the outset, I thank Mrs. Hema Malini ji, Member of Parliament, for her lovely message and well wishes. I especially thank our key panelist, Professor Neeta Awasthi, Director, GL Bajaj Group of Institutions, Mathura, Professor Swati Pal, Principal, Janki Devi Memorial College, Delhi University, New Delhi, Ms. Nashi Chauhan, Director, Anand Niketan Group of Schools, Gujarat, Ms. Kanchi Khanna, Director, Admissions Outreach, Alaksha University, Punjab, Ms. Shalini Bhadoria, Chairperson, Rajasthan Bar Council, Rajasthan, Ms. Priyanka Bhatkoti, Principal, Max Fort School, Dwarka, New Delhi. Ma'am, we are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. We are thankful to our Honorable Chairman, Dr. Ram Kishore Agarwal and Vice Chairman Shri Pankaj Agarwal for their motivation and guidance. I would like to thank Professor Shravan Kumar for his contribution towards organizing this event in association with LTI. I also thank Professor Harleen, Chairperson of Women's Cell, for her enthusiastic moderation of the session. Architect Tanya Bera, Dr. Snehalata Kashyap, Dishi, and all the participants who joined several organizations and others who contributed directly and indirectly. With these words and a kind message, we move to the end of today's panel discussion. Thank you and happy Women's Day to all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Neeta ma'am. Thank you, Nashi ma'am. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy. Have a nice evening ahead.
Thank you. Record the everything.